Hey everybody, welcome to 2022. It is time for Midas Letter RAW, and this is my good friend and co-host Edward Molesky back from travels where we don't know, dark hinterlands of the market's deepest, darkest parts. Anyways, more of the same here this year. We're going to tell you about the stocks that we own. We're going to tell you about stocks we wished we owned, and we're going to talk about stocks we're glad we don't own. Besides our usual pontifications on markets and what's driving them hither and thither, we have two excellent guests today. Of course, our good friend Wolf Richter is going to enlighten us as to the de-liquification of the market at the hands of the Fed and give us some insight from his perspective in California about what that means for markets. And Payton Nyquvest joins us for some much needed therapy on the use of psychedelics to treat mental illnesses. And
when you start to see what happened to your portfolio in the stock market, you're going to need all the help you can get.
That's my point. If you're enjoying the show, subscribe to Midas Letter on YouTube so you stay up to date on everything investment. Before we get any further along here, I'm going to pull up some of the viewer comments and questions. Probing Stocks has a very profound question. He wants to know, how's life on the shoreline? No, that's a line from a Max Webster tune. He wants to know, how's life? Ed, how's life?
You know, life is, that's very deep.
Medical Fire wants to know, what's your favorite cannabis to consume? And does it relate to the stock in any way? Medical Fire, I can tell you personally that my favorite cannabis to consume is the cannabis that I grow myself. I grew a strain of Cannatonic, and it is predominantly CBD with very low THC.
Yeah.
And I can smoke it without becoming a reclusive catatonic asshole.
Yeah, without becoming a catatonic.
Yeah. So what's your favorite cannabis?
You know what? It's sativa.
Well, the last...
Is it?
No, you
the
tend
sativa
to...
high in THC?
That's a whole other can of worms.
You know what? I don't even know.
In the genetic landscape of cannabis these days, it's very rare to find anything that trends to purely sativa or purely indica. There are even some arguments from some of the real sort of propeller heads in the space that there is no difference between, there is no sativa or
there's pot.
Ruderalis or indica. It's all the same, and it's just grown in different regions that have been given different names from different.
Right.
And I'm not going to jump on that wagon because it's just gotten too complicated, and there's no longer any way to say who's right and who's wrong. And here's the problem: the people who consume the most weed can't remember what they know anymore because they're memory's shot because they've been one byproduct of THC consumption. Dave, don't interrupt. Oh, you're not Dave. What was your name again? Yeah.
Where am I?
So I hope that answered your question, Medical Fire. I smoke my own, and actually the last weed I gave to you, I didn't grow. Actually, my neighbor grew, and it was G20.
G20.
And it was super high THC. I think it was 24%. Whew. Yeah. So no, we don't buy pot from anybody because we all grow our own here in Ontario.
Why wouldn't you? What
good Canadian does not grow their own weed? I ask you.
It's like having a still.
But to your point about does it reflect the stock in any way, this is the reason I believe that Canadian cannabis stocks as a whole are hard-pressed to become profitable in any way except for the value-add extractors, and I'm not going to name any there because I don't own any of them, so why bother? But I don't think there's any point in owning any cannabis company that is based in the Canadian market because the black market is too robust and the homegrown market is, like I grow my own, who wouldn't? Homegrown. Aaron Lucas wants to know, do you have a prediction for what the Bitcoin price will be at the end of 2022? Boy, that's putting us on the spot. Now, we talked about Bitcoin, and as you probably all know, Ed and I or at least I'm not going to speak for you, I'm a major Bitcoin skeptic. I think it's worth fundamentally nothing. And I do believe that that is the price it is going to go to at some point. I believe the catalyst for that event will be simultaneous announcement by G7 countries that outlaw the use of anything except government tender as currency, which would completely destroy the viability of Bitcoin. Now, that doesn't mean that Ethereum wouldn't continue to thrive, because Ethereum is a much more utilitarian cryptocurrency because it has all of these features that allow for it to act as a contract with self-modulating, regulating features in it. That's just crazy. But so the price of Bitcoin at the end of 2022, it's either going to be $200,000 or it's going to be zero. That's my prediction. Ed?
Yeah, I'm going to say somewhere between, I'm going to say, 40 and 20, 45 and 25. That's
dollars?
What I think. $1,000. I think
between 45 and 25,000.
Yeah, but it could be,
Oh, so you're basically saying it's going to trade lower.
I think it's going to grind lower.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at the chart. So this is another thing. Ed and I were predicting. Well, I'm always predicting the demise of Bitcoin. Certainly, the bear market is
See, now we're
on
at a very dangerous level. Now we're back to where we were. Remember with that big spike he just went by there?
Yeah.
Right over here, little bit more there. Yeah, keep going. Right there.
Oh, there.
Yeah, that bottom.
Yeah.
And our bottom, there's
this is.
Yeah, like we're testing lows here, recent lows.
Right.
We break that, then it's going to be another couple $1,000. But we also said that this was shit, a few months ago, and the thing went straight up.
Well, this is the thing.
It's longer than you want it,
Even if this is going to zero, it's not safe to say that you can't make a fortune trading Bitcoin. Right. Even if it's going to zero, you can still make a fortune trading Bitcoin. You can make it on the short side. You can make it on the spikes. You can make it trading the volatility, the swing trades, the day trades, it's, and this is the thing about our modern era. Just because a thing doesn't have value doesn't mean you can't make money off of it. And this is really the fundamental thing.
These meme stocks, like they went from, they saved companies like that.
And destroyed them.
And
ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very sad.
The word I'm going to use today is the world seems to be getting more and more volatile.
Volatility.
We seem...
Volatility.
Like yesterday, the Fed said, we're going to reduce our...
All right. You want to start with a chat about the Fed then, do you?
But you just see what happened. The market's down over 3% in the NASDAQ.
Look at this.
Look at this.
In the last 3 sessions, the 10-year rate has gone from a low of 154 to current level 174, 173.
Right about the highest it's been since we had this whole thing that started.
Yeah. Since the Fed came out and said, we're going to have to raise rates a little higher than we thought, and we're tapering.
Yeah.
So, in terms of where the market's going to go in 2022, these are fundamental factors to catalyze what I would call, if not a major retracement in valuations, then an out and out financial crisis. Because think about it. You've got moratoriums ending on mortgages. You've got interest rates rising. Right. You've got stimulus being reined in. So stocks are going to fall. People are going to not going to be able to refinance their properties. They're going to be foreclosed upon. There's going to be excess inventory in the market. I think that in 2022, among the predictions that I can safely say is that we're going to see some major volatility in the real estate sector.
Listen, growth and higher interest rates aren't friendly.
They don't like each other.
You have growth when rates are dropping.
Yeah.
You get crazy growth at extremely low interest rates. And now rates just starting to tick up a bit.
Yeah.
Apple hit $3 trillion.
$3 trillion.
And none of the FANG stocks hit new highs, only Apple.
What does that say?
I'd say the breath got out of whack. There was only 1 or 2 stocks maybe that was taking in the money.
Yeah.
And if you back out those big ones, the market's had a shit year.
You're quite right. So copper is hanging in here at what does that say? 435 today.
Yeah.
And, kind of trading range bound, 450 down here to as low as 423, even down here below 412. So what's holding copper back? What's keeping it up there? Well, what's keeping it up there? Chile just turned into a communist country, and that does not bode well.
And if you look at the inventories, the world inventories of copper, they're about as low as they've been in a while.
Right.
So where's the copper going to come from?
Well, you also have Evergrande in the midst of a complete meltdown, which is one of the biggest home builders in China.
So that's for the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's pluses and minuses.
Pluses and minuses, but we still have the global head grade of copper continues to deteriorate. Now global average below 0.75%, I believe. And so that just requires the price of copper to rise to make it profitable to produce at those levels.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of factors driving copper higher. There's a lot of factors suppressing copper. So if we were to hit the economic crisis that I believe is going to start to unfold in 2022, I expect copper prices to head back to $2. And I say this as
listen.
As a holder of a copper company. I'm basically shooting, here's my foot.
Yeah, you shoot something.
Blam, 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 blam.
I'll say this, if copper goes back to 2, then the world's going to be a lot smaller.
Yes.
A lot smaller from a money. The world's not going to shrink. Like, your property isn't going to shrink.
Right.
I don't mean that.
Well, it might.
Financially smaller.
Right. There's going to be less money to be made.
What about silver? I think I saw something by Jimmy Rogers. He says Jim Rogers.
I've interviewed him on the show a few times.
With me once.
Yeah, that's right.
He says silver, copper, and farm products.
Yeah.
Silver, copper, but he's been saying it for a while.
I'm going to let you guys all in on a silver pick here. And this is now full disclosure. I bought 160,000 shares of this stock yesterday at 10 cents. So I got some at 9 cents, some at 10 cents.
I have an RRSP where I bought some of this a little while ago.
So we're conflicted.
Well,
we shouldn't be trusted.
No, I bought it because I bought a little cheaper.
But anyways, this has, according to people close to the company, they've got the 19th largest silver deposit in the world in Idaho.
They're Hercules.
If you want to own silver, you want to own the Hercules deposit. Anyways, so this stock is trading at 10 cents. There's, I think, 100 million shares out. I bought 160,000, so if this stock goes up, I stand to make money, so you shouldn't trust me. I'm biased, conflicted, not to be trusted, but hey, Nancy Pelosi can do it, why can't I? So, so anyways, this is a company that has been lying kind of dormant because the property's been a question mark, but now it's got some certainty around it, and some very talented people have taken the reins, so to speak. And so we have every reason to believe that this stock...
Is the phrase talented people, is that a bit of an oxymoron? Well, talented people. Well, I'm talking about these people. I'm talking about in general.
The Buddha says, never mention a person who's not in the room with you.
Well, that's
basically...
The root of all suffering, according to the Buddhist, is...
desire.
That's it.
Desire.
How did you know that?
Because I've been suffering so much for years and years and years, and finally I desire nothing and I have everything. Yeah. I've just realized, oh my God, look at the fish, look at the fish. The fish taught me everything I know. If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. As Ed and I were noticing before we started the show today, our accuracy in what we said was the beginning of 2022 is going to look like. We've been bang on. And we're going to start with those predictions. We're going to start with lumber prices. Now, lumber prices, the commodity price for random length lumber is now sitting at $1,218 USD. And back here when it was like 600, 700, we said, better buy all the lumber you need for your building projects now, because come 2022, those prices are going to spike. And sure enough, here they are. Now, the interesting phenomenon is in the retail environment, prices are generally still at the levels that they were in August of 2021. Why? Because the retailers loaded up on cheap lumber when prices finally retreated back here, and now they're still sitting on that inventory, and their prices reflect the price that they bought it at, not the commodity futures price. So when you see the commodity futures price here, if you've got any projects requiring a great deal of lumber, I suggest you buy it now. Now, that being said, we also are going into a situation where housing market could go in the crapper. New housing starts are, if the moratorium ends and there's an explosion in inventory in the United States, that is basically what's required. You need 5 months of inventory to indicate a bear market in the real estate housing sector. So right now we're still at less than 1 month inventory. And so if we need 4 more months of inventory to build in the system, which if the moratorium comes off of the mortgages and foreclosures, that is going to catalyze that 5 months of inventory, which will signal a bear market, which will signal a diminishment in housing starts, which should catalyze a retracement in the lumber price in the commodities market. So if these guys have enough, if the retailers have enough lumber in supply to ride out this bump in prices, then we might actually not see a rise in retail prices. We're only going to see a rise in the commodity price. Anyways, is that confusing enough for you?
It sure is confusing to me.
Yeah, well, the only thing that makes me able to keep track of the two different markets is the fact that I am a retail customer.
Psychedelics.
I use those psychedelics. That's right. Numinus is a good friend of mine. No, but I have actually started consuming a great deal more psychedelics, and I'll tell you, they work. They work. They work, Bugs Bunny.
Okay.
So there's where so basically our prediction about the lumber prices have so far panned out to be accurate. Where else were we accurate? Well,
I'll tell you one.
What?
We were sitting here talking about how Amazon may have made a double top a couple weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. And if you look at Amazon, it looks like
there's Amazon right there.
Oh, look.
Drive.
Look. Right there.
Yeah.
And then it got over here.
Yeah.
Several months later or whatever.
Yeah.
And look how that wick developed really quickly. It's so
John Wick.
Really
bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, look.
Yeah. So is that an inverse head and shoulders?
I wouldn't say that. I would just say it looks like a double top. And now we're here we are down in here.
Yeah.
So this trend here has broken to the downside a bit. You know, I'm not saying that things broken down yet. I'm saying here's the second or third largest company in the world.
Yeah.
Amazon and...
Nancy Pelosi, who might be considered to have an inside edge on information.
You think she might know things before the average person?
She's gone long Amazon calls. She's bought
How do you know that?
Because it's on TikTok. My greatest financial advisor is not any economist. No. It's not any banker.
It's
coming TikTok.
Out telling her picks.
They have to disclose the stocks that they're buying as they buy them, much as if they're insiders in the United States now. New legislation. And so, but the interesting thing, the whole idea was behind that was to stop senators from exploiting their inside information access to buy stocks. They're not supposed to buy stocks. So they came out.
They can't help it.
They can't help it. They're like, hey, I'm making money.
They're making.
Why am I going to stop here?
That's not insider trading.
Oh, no. That's not insider trading when the Speaker of the House loads up on Amazon because she knows thing or two about which direction the Fed is going to go and when. So the interesting thing is, here you've got the Fed signaling to the market that we're going to accelerate the interest rates rise, 4 rate hikes in 2022. 2.75% will be the ultimate target, according to your friend, Mr. Weens, who works where?
Byron Ween. Which is the... I believe he's like the second or third in command at BlackRock. He has these annual picks. And these are his picks.
He should know a thing or two.
He's not he's a bit long in the tooth. As I am.
Yes.
And he said he thinks there's going to be 4 rate hikes in 2022 which will culminate in a yield, 10-year yield of 2.75, which is about 100 basis points from where we are.
Wow.
So from 175 to 275, give or take.
Wow. So that's
this year.
So what's that going to do for...
we're going to find out.
So for sure that's going to stop the companies that are financing their stock buybacks with borrowed money, with leverage, because the value proposition wears off. It costs them, cost of capital goes too high. It's no longer worth it for them to buy stock and retire.
There's going to be winners and losers, but I suspect there's going to be a lot more losers.
Well, is it not the case that if companies stop buying back their stock, that the impetus for them to go higher is removed, and they're going to go lower?
Yeah. Well,
so
they're so loaded up on their own stock, they have every incentive to get it higher.
Well, exactly.
And they've resorted to buying back their own stock.
You know, there's so much in the market these days that you think that should be illegal. That should be illegal. That should be illegal.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, go little rock star. Everything is allowed now. Imaginary assets, NFTs. Like, I have yet to hear anybody give me an explanation for an NFT that makes any financial sense.
But it's unique. It's a like if you draw something digitally.
Yes.
There's never going to be another one of those again. That's the only one.
But that's bullshit.
Of course, it's bullshit. But
nothing can be replicated.
Bullshit baffles brains.
No, I'm baffled. And I don't propose to be have anything in the brains department.
No, I know. You know what? This whole thing smacks of...
It's fraud.
And you know what else somebody said? They said that, I think it was Ray Dalio, that the only thing that doesn't attach something to it is still bullion.
Bullion. Gold.
Gold.
Did you hear that?
Also,
gold.
Silver would apply.
Silver.
Copper.
Copper. You! Yeah, let's see. My book value of my U.S. copper position is $160,000, and the market value of that position is currently worth $50,000. So what does that tell you? That tells you that I own 780,000 shares, and I've lost $100,000 on U.S. copper.
Take the company over. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I was talking to the CEO today, and I said, Steve, what's going on? He's like, well, not much we can do. We've got 2 billion pounds of copper. We're talking to them, but you know what it is? And this is the sentiment, I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say this, but I got the sense that there's really no catalyst for people to buy copper, like for a producer to buy a copper mine in California right now. I talked to another investor.
Unless copper went to $10. Maybe that would
that would be a catalyst.
That would be a catalyst.
But copper roared up to 480 and stopped, backed off, went down to 406, and it's sort of now range bound to that 406. As soon as something's range bound, people no longer want to buy it. They want something that's going up, 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 and up.
They want a Mustang. They want a wild horse.
Well, and so what's going up, 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 and up still? Well, how about oil? Look at oil since the beginning of December.
When I think of volatility, I think of 85 to 62. And now back to 79. Like this is all what, in 3 months?
Yeah.
3 months? Like,
yeah. And Goldman's,
how does that happen?
Well,
I still say they burn 90 million barrels a day of oil in the world. I'm going to say 90. Maybe
94.
85, maybe 94.
Do you hear 92?
The point is, if something were to happen to the supply, and this thing escalates, this drives people crazy.
Yeah.
You know who's sitting there wringing his hands? Vladimir Putin.
Why is Vladimir? 50% of the Russians.
I know.
Right. So that's why he's rattling his saber.
And then he can say, hey, maybe I'll just shut the gas off to Europe.
Well, did you see the price of gas in Europe right now?
Going crazy.
Well, I guess Kazakhstan. Well, now let's talk about Kazakhstan for a moment. Now, here we are, one of the frontier countries on Russia's doorstep, and already management of Kazakhstan, which some people call the government. I call them management because really Kazakhstan...
By the way, before we go any further, I want to say I like Vladimir. I have no problems with him.
Oh, you're like a Trump guy.
No, I just don't want any problems.
So anyways, the guys in Kazakhstan are already blaming the West for this destabilization of their social scene. And, that would not be that is not illogical, because certainly the West would be interested in a destabilized country on Russia's doorstep, especially as they worry about the Ukraine.
Right.
And the Nord 2 pipeline passes through the Ukraine, and I suspect that's more driving why they want to control Ukraine than anything else, is because control Ukraine and you control one of the major pipelines into Europe with all that gas.
It's back to power and money.
Power and money.
You know, a recurring theme or recurring news story is that the infrastructure has been shut down in the U.S. for energy to a degree. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're preparing for green energy infrastructure, but that hasn't come yet. So they say that if it really got crazy in the Northeast in terms of weather this winter, they'd be in trouble.
Well, never mind the Northeast. What about Texas in the South?
Screw that. What about Toronto?
What about Dunnville? Why fucking freezing out there?
Where are we?
Dunnville, the center of the economic universe.
Well,
you know, Wall Street runs all the way from the foot of Manhattan right and ends at Dunnville? Yeah, exactly. A 5-hour round trip.
It's going to be interesting. We're seeing, and look at those fires.
Fuck Boulder, Colorado.
Just what?
Can you imagine moving to Boulder, Colorado?
15 minutes later,
your house is gone.
No more
1,000 houses. What is going on in the planet? I know, Boulder. You're thinking, I've moved to the
it's
most
a rock,
pastoral...
right? Boulder. You'd think a rock.
Well, it's alpine. It's the Rockies.
Jesus.
It's a rock in the Rockies. And you think that you moved to this pastoral environment and your house is blown up next thing you know, and you're thinking, what the fuck did I move here for?
Yeah, and those wild tornadoes.
Fuck.
So we're seeing some events in different times of the year. Tornadoes that usually occur in December.
Well,
you know, that's...
Well, wildfires usually happen in late fall.
Yeah, there you go.
Or midsummer.
Yes.
So a wildfire blowing through a high alpine region in the middle of the winter is kind of like...
They were saying some of the gusts there were like 90, 100 miles an hour.
Well, what about this new category of weather phenomenon called the atmospheric river?
Yeah. I read about it. I just don't understand it still, of course, because I only read it 10 times.
I asked people in Vancouver about it. I said, look, you guys have got this new phenomenon, the atmospheric river. Vancouver's wet, no matter what. But now this atmospheric river, I talked to my mother, you know what she said?
Deluge comes to mind.
Deluge. Yeah. It's a deluge. Biblical.
I can't even pronounce it.
Do you know what my mother said? I don't either, because she was talking like this. She was underwater. Everything is underwater now.
Yeah, atmospheric. Look it up. It's very interesting. I guess the pressure changes and it causes just a dump, right?
Yeah.
It just...
Yeah. So if there's anybody who's going to need ketamine, it's people in BC. Ketamine, because of the atmospheric rivers. Speaking of ketamine and psychedelics, our first guest today is none other than Payton Nyquvest of Numinus Wellness Payton Nyquvest joins us now, CEO of Numinus Wellness Inc., trading now on the TSX under the symbol NUMI. Payton, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Payton, we were talking to you earlier this year, and things were rolling along quite well for Numinus. Tell us what's happened since we saw you last.
Yeah, it's been a busy period for us. As you said at the beginning, we've uplisted to the TSX from the TSX Venture, which we're very excited and grateful about. Obviously, being on the premier exchange in Canada is validating not only for us but for the industry as well, as it's an emerging industry. And looking forward to 2022, sort of along with our pathway towards further more senior U.S. uplistings as well. And then really on the business side, it's been very busy. We've integrated a couple of acquisitions, including the Neurology Center of Toronto, and continue to advance some of our research initiatives with MDMA and psilocybin.
You bet. Okay, so then now, what's sort of the pathway to profitability for the company at this point?
Yeah, so for us, twofold, and sort of the business model that we've created, diversified in sort of Numinus Health, which is our clinical infrastructure, doing traditional mental health services, as well as ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. And now looking to 2022 is really next year being about implementing and integrating MDMA and psilocybin-assisted therapy, which MDMA is expected to be legal for therapy in 2023. So it's really getting the foundation in place to be ready for that. for 2023. So for us, continuing to generate revenue from Numinus Health, while integrating also some of these psychedelic programs. And then on the Numinus Bioscience side of things, continuing to generate revenue from analytical testing and services, while also moving forward our psilocybin extraction, which you're seeing a really interesting regulatory environment in Canada in particular at the moment around psilocybin, which may allow for us to start to have psilocybin-based products in market for sale next year as well. So you're seeing a couple really interesting catalysts around not only the psychedelic therapy side of things, but also the starting to be able to find a market for the actual drug itself outside of research.
Yeah, you bet. Can you talk about any sort of, just without obviously revealing private information, can you give us a sort of description of like what's the experience like for a patient who's coming to Numinus for a treatment, say a ketamine treatment? Like what is the circumstances that drives them there? How do they get into the intake program, and how does the whole experience go for them?
Yeah, and I think this is one of the bigger pieces for people to really understand around psychedelic therapy is you need to think of it as like an intervention. What psychedelics are showing is they have the potential for curative intent. And that's a big mindset shift for people in regards to mental health. Traditionally we've diagnosed someone as depressed and we put you on an antidepressant and you see your therapist potentially for the rest of your life. And this is something that you manage. With psychedelics, we believe that we can cure a number of these mental health issues, really sort of highlighted by the MAPS phase 3 results, which showed over 67% of people saw an actual cure of their treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder. So what that sort of looks like in regards to the treatment is usually it's about 3 treatments. I'll use MDMA as an example. So there's an intake process. We identify what the indication is that you're challenged with. Usually you get referred to us from a referring GP. We then intake you, we do some prep work, and then usually 3 dosing sessions. So a dosing session is sort of an all-day, 4 to 6 hour therapy with, again, I'll use MDMA as the example, with MDMA, and there's 3 treatments of that. You go through a dosing session, and then there's some integration work, which is just one-on-one work with your therapist, and then into another dosing session, usually a week or 2 weeks later, and then subsequent. And within, potentially 3 months, you're looking at again, potentially a cure for some of these things that we've always believed that are things that just need symptom management for the rest of your life.
Sure. So when you say a cure, you're saying that after treatment, somebody with treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder is responding with saying, okay, I don't have these demons, these issues, this depression, this obsessive thought pattern, whatever the nature of their PTSD happens to be. They just don't need that anymore, and they don't need the program anymore because it's work in final.
Exactly. And that's, so again, the MAPS phase 3 work, 67% of people no longer met the PTSD criteria after 3 treatments. So that's a cure.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, that's really intriguing. I can't say enough about how much I love the fact that psychedelics, which I would say that I've always had a suspicion were very effective at treating mental disorders, and I like to think of it as what has prevented me from ever having one beyond the normal obsessive compulsive human nature. But so then, is it difficult for people to get involved? So you go to a GP. I know people who are suffering from different types of mental illness, and I kind of feel like I'm in a position to recommend that they ask their GP about this particular approach to treatment. Is it something that every GP in Canada at this point or in the United States is going to know about and be able to say, oh, yes, actually, it's showing great promise. If you'd like to try it, I can get you involved, or we can do some more work to figure out if it's right for you. Is it currently available to everyone is the point I'm trying to make.
So that's part of the work at the moment is working with the healthcare providers to get them in education. At the moment, right now, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy is the only legal outside of a research context psychedelic that's being used for treatment, which has been shown to be really effective in the treatment of depression. MDMA and psilocybin, as I mentioned, MDMA is expected to be legal in 2023, psilocybin potentially shortly after that. One of the things that's really interesting in Canada at the moment, though, is a year ago, Health Canada posted their intention to change what's called the Special Access Drug Program. The Special Access Drug Program is a program in Canada that allows for unlimited amount of Canadians to get access to drugs or therapies that have shown significant benefit before they've finished going through the clinical trial process. Now, that change with psychedelics, in particular MDMA and psilocybin, is anticipated to come through before the end of this year. So could potentially be any day now. And what that would allow for is, as I mentioned, an unlimited amount of Canadians to get referred to the Special Access Drug Program to get access to MDMA or psilocybin therapy. Now, a lot of people draw parallels to like the Section 56 exemptions that have been issued from Health Canada, which is a bit of a slower process. The thing that people need to understand with the Special Access Drug Program is that Health Canada has to respond within 48 hours. So it is fast. It's certainly not, end state, but we could see next year in Canada, again, unlimited amounts of Canadians getting potential access to these therapies. So it is very much right around the corner. And while a lot of the focus has been on treating specific indications, where Numinus has also been focusing is, where does this fit as a standard of care within the healthcare system? One of the reasons why psychedelics here is, as you mentioned, we've got this massive burden on the healthcare system at the moment in regards to all these mental health issues, and we need to alleviate that burden. And that's where we think psychedelics can play a really pivotal role.
Sure. What made you move to the TSX from the NEO?
So we actually always were on the TSX Venture Exchange. We never were on the NEO, and that was pretty intentional for us to go on the TSX. Obviously,
sure.
In an industry that is got some stigma attached to it. There's a lot of conversation around psychedelics as a treatment modality, and we really wanted to make sure that similarly from a capital market side of things, moving forward with a high integrity exchange that's really adding legitimacy to not only us, but the space in general.
Yeah, you bet. All right, Payton, we're going to leave it there for now. I really appreciate your time and the update, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Thanks for your time.
Likewise.
Bye for now. So Numinus is, looks like it's bottomed out here, and this might be the worst is over.
Yeah.
They financed the company way back here. Whoa! So these guys are definitely like miserable. And down here, seeing this action, they're going to be happy. So Numinus might be a buy down here, and we're going to have Payton back regularly this year to talk about it.
Okay.
Why? Because I believe in what he's doing. He's raised a lot of money at good valuations, and I think that company's got a real future. Yeah. So I don't own it yet, but we might.
Okay.
Now, want to mention our good friends in Spain, in Malaga.
Mijas
Football Club.
Mijas Football Club. The
Rugby Club.
Eagles.
Mijas Eagles.
That's it. They're going to be in the limelight for a few years to come.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Powerful group. Are they playing in the Worlds?
No, it's just more of a starter league.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So good time to get in.
Good time to get in. Maybe send them some money.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a GoFundMe page for them, isn't there?
Yeah,
if you want to support amateur rugby
at its best,
and you want an invitation to drink with the boys in Malaga, Spain, I suggest you go look up the Mijas Eagles.
Yeah, we're a real eclectic group.
Real eclectic.
Yeah.
Right now, coming up here next, up on the show, no hesitation, no delay, we've got the one, the only, the publisher of the Wolf Street. Wolf Richter joins us now live from San Francisco. Wolf Richter joins me now, publisher of Wolf Street. Wolf, welcome back and Happy New Year.
Thanks for having me back, and Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you. Wolf, you've been focusing quite a bit lately in your writing on the deleveraging, or the withdrawal of liquidity by the Fed in the market. And so what does that all sort of portend for stocks and the markets generally in 2022?
Well, so we come out of an era of excess liquidity and huge amounts of it, where central banks, particularly the Fed, have printed money, thereby created trillions of dollars, and some of that was plowed into assets, so we had asset prices shoot to the sky, and some of it found no use. And there's like $1.5 trillion US dollars in the money markets that that were in excess, and people couldn't figure out what to do with it. And so they tried to buy treasury securities with it and treasury bills, and they turned negative. So this happened early last year. And so the Fed then instituted a reverse repo program to actually take this extra cash off the market and exchange them for securities that it has on its balance sheet. And so now we had nearly $2 trillion at the end of the year in cash that the Fed took out that way. And so now what we've got also sort of in parallel is that the Fed has embarked on a tightening course. And of course, that was sort of announced after the mid-December meeting. And yesterday, the minutes came out. And so the bloody detail of this were revealed. And yeah, it's going to mean rate hikes sooner and faster and more. And it's going to mean a balance sheet unwind that starts sooner. It's going to be faster and it's going to be larger. And the Fed is now really spooked about this inflation finally, after brushing it off for a year and saying it's no big deal. So now we've got this situation where the exit of this excess liquidity period is being outlined. And of course, markets have reacted to that, but that's what we're looking at right now.
Sure. So then the sell-off, or rather the weakness in the markets that we're seeing, I guess, is in anticipation of higher rates, less stimulus equals less companies buying back their stocks, which has been an upward factor for years now. And so in my view, I'm wondering, is this going to catalyze a major discount to the entire marketplace throughout 2022?
Yeah, I wish I knew the answer to that, but sooner or later, asset prices are going to be impacted by this. And the question is whether it's going to happen in 2022 or whether it's going to happen later. What the Fed is going to do is the opposite of QE. And it's the opposite of cutting rates. So it's raising rates and it's doing quantitative tightening. So it's undoing some of the QE, and it said that it will go faster, and the last time it did that, and it will go for longer, and it has instituted reverse repos and repo facilities with which it can control the market, so it no longer has to do QE. It said that yesterday, so it's backing out of this whole notion of QE to begin with, and QE was designed to pump up asset prices. That's what it does, and by pumping up asset prices, it pushes down long-term interest rates, and so in the bond market, that's what happens, and that's all going to get unwound. So bonds, for sure, when long-term interest rates go up, bonds go down by definition. So the bond market, for sure, is going to take a pretty good licking, and this will happen this year, most likely. And it's already happened last year. It's going to happen this year again, and that's unusual for 2 years in a row, but I think that's what we're going to look at. In terms of stocks, it just depends how quickly the stock market reacts to this. Mortgages are going to have higher rates in the United States. So our benchmark rate is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and that is tied to long-term treasury rate. So I can't imagine that mortgage rates don't go up, so they will go up. We don't know by how much, maybe a couple of percentage points. At these extraordinary home prices we have today, the affordability problem will just have to reset the prices. The market will lock up, and there won't be any transactions. So if you have to sell your house, you have to cut the price, and so it will gradually wind down asset prices. Now, I don't think we'll see that like from one day to the next. It's going to happen over the years, and And this is a long process, and especially in housing, I don't think that's going to be a fast thing. It's going to be slow, and it'll take a while to be apparent.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think that the end of forbearance and moratoriums on mortgages and foreclosures, et cetera, you don't see that catalyzing sort of a spark to the downside for the whole housing market?
So the end of forbearance got sort of dealt with by having home prices explode higher over the past 12 months. So this means that people that cannot meet the mortgage payments, they can sell the house and have enough equity in it to pay off the mortgage and get out of it. And that's what's been happening. So the people have been able to refinance because home prices have come up, and others have been able to restructure their mortgages in some way, and others have been able to sell their homes and pay off the mortgage. So in an environment of rising home prices, of sharply rising home prices, you can't really have a mortgage meltdown. That happens after several years of house price declines. So not the first year, not the second year. Last time we had the mortgage crisis, it started hitting in 2008. We had house prices that started declining in 2006. So it took over 2 years. So this is why housing markets react just slowly. It takes a long time for them to turn around. It's a very illiquid market. You don't trade homes with a click of a mouse. It's in a tight market, houses sell very quickly, but in a slower market, they can sit for months before you have a sale, and then prices are negotiated one by one, and so I don't expect any sudden downturn in the housing market. This is just going to take a long time. It's just it's measured in years, and that's we might see the beginnings of that this year. That's what my guess will be, that we will see the beginnings of this multi-year process.
Right. So then what effect do you see this having in 2022 on all the issues surrounding supply chain and shortages and shipping congestion at ports?
Yeah, so a little bit of decline in demand would help everybody out. If you got demand to go down a little bit, and so that supply chains could catch up and everybody could get their house back in order and run things efficiently. That is part of the solution to inflation. You take demand down a notch, and then you have more ability to deal with the supply issues, and there's more competition among suppliers, and so the prices will stop going up. And so this whole thing is that we have now with the supply chain issues is a demand problem. We've had this explosion of demand from stimulus, and the supply chains weren't ready for it. And so this contributed to everything. But when you bring that demand back down a little bit, just a few notches, I think it will help solve the supply chain problems. Now, a lot of the inflationary issues that we now have nothing to do with supply chains. They're in services, they're in housing, they're in all kinds of things. That there are no bottlenecks and no containers involved, and no plants in Asia. This is just homegrown services that are now shooting up in price. So, solving the supply chain issues will solve some problems, but it won't solve the overall pricing issues.
Sure. And then, so how do you see all this sort of wrapping it all up towards commodities now? Like, we've seen commodity prices explode in the last couple of years. Is that trend, do you see it continuing, or is this sort of easing off on the gas pedal of the economic drivers going to also pull back a bit on what's the driving forces of the commodities?
Yeah, so what we've seen in the last 12 months is that, the individual commodities will just explode in price. And whether it's lumber or natural gas in the United States or other things, and that would just spike by extraordinary amounts, and everybody think, oh my God. And then, then suddenly it turns around and the thing goes back down partially, but not all the way. And then, okay, so that's settled, that worked out. And then 3 months later, it spikes again. And you have these ups and downs of these commodities, and they're taking turns spiking and coming back down and then respiking, and they're not going back down all the way. They're going down partially and then use that as a lower base and then jump back up. So this is just extremely volatile there in commodities now, and I mean, some of the pricing volatility that I've looked at is just historic, and you look at some of these prices and you know that they cannot last like the prices we've seen in lumber. That was just ridiculous, and they come down and then they respike. And now oil is really not priced that high right now, and it used to be in terms of West Texas Intermediate, our benchmark here, it used to be at $150 a barrel in early 2000, in 2007, early 2008, and now we're looking at $75 a barrel. So oil really hasn't spiked that much. I'm waiting for oil to go back to 150. I mean, that's really the big commodity, and it really hasn't gone up a lot. It collapsed in 2014, 15, and 16, and has recovered in part from that collapse, but it's still not back over $100 a barrel where it was in early 2014. And so we really haven't seen any inflationary impact from a huge spike in oil. And so there's other things like that where commodities have not really hit the inflation figures yet. So that might just come. When oil price doubles from here, you have an extra layer of inflation on top of everything. So this is just really hard to predict how these commodities are going to move. I mean, transportation, in terms of demand, it's still down from where it was before the pandemic. I mean, there's people are still they're traveling domestically by plane. They're driving almost as much as they used to, but not quite. And there's commuting going on, and there's more of it maybe than before because people don't take the public transit anymore. So you got these kind of conflicting things, but overall demand is just really not quite back yet where it was, and here in the United States. And so OPEC's been dealing with it. Russia's been dealing with it. They're all trying to balance the price of oil so it doesn't spike too much or collapse too much. And that's the thing I'm waiting for is for oil to go to $150 a barrel. We'll have inflation out the wazoo when that happens.
Sure. Well, I guess so. We're not in a situation where the pandemic's over, but this latest Omicron phenomenon is that, yes, it's infectious, but people are hospitalized and not dying. And so it seems to me like if you look at Boris Johnson in the UK has said, well, we're not going to bother with lockdowns or closing restaurants anymore. We're just going to let it run its course because people have stopped dying. And you go to Florida and you walk around there and it's like you look out of place if you have a mask on in some places. And so it's not that the pandemic is ending, but it looks like people have decided that let the chips fall where they may. I'm resuming my lifestyle and I'm going to go where I want and take my chances. The vaccines, obviously, a lot of people are triple vaxxed, some are even quadruple vaxxed now. People are sort of embracing the idea that maybe they're going to get vaccinated twice a year until this coronavirus phenomenon subsides a little bit more. But that return or determination to return to a normal lifestyle in 2022, regardless of the pandemic, do you think that is going to have a catalytic effect on the price of oil? And maybe that's what's going to drive us to $150 a barrel again in 2022?
Yeah, so the two things that I see so far that have dampened the demand for oil is international travel and some driving due to working from home. And people work from home a lot more than they used to, and that's still the case. So there's some damper on demand from that. But other than that, the economy has changed. Things have changed. But I live here in San Francisco, and And I can't tell the difference outside of masks from before the pandemic and now. I mean, everything's open, everything's working. The restaurants are open. I mean, some people sit outside, some people sit inside, but now it's cold, so fewer people sit outside and more people sit inside, and they're full, those restaurants. They're hard to get into. I flew the other day to Oklahoma from here, and chaos. One of my flights was canceled, so packed airports. I don't. This is maybe worse than it was before. I don't see. Domestic travel is really pretty strong right now, so I don't see that there can be a whole lot of pickup after this in terms of what else people are going to do, because they're already doing everything. There's not that many things that people are not doing. Now there's discussions about in-person schooling and those kinds of things that communities are struggling with, but I don't think that will impact demand for oil in a significant way. I don't think we'll have a spike in activity after this Omicron. Because I don't see the dip in activity. Just people just kind of, like you said, okay, we've got this thing, we're going to have to live with it, and we take the precautions we want to take, and if we don't want to take any precautions, well, then we don't, and we just go on. Yeah. And that seems to be the attitude now. After 2 years of this thing, people are just leading their lives.
Yeah. All right, Wolf, we'll leave it there for now. I look forward to talking to you again a little later this month, and thanks for joining me today.
All right, thank you, James.
So Wolf, as usual, erudite, very knowledgeable, and we're very much aligned. That's why we like to have him on the show. He thinks like we do. Hey, what can we say?
So they're going to accelerate the taper. They're going to accelerate, which means they're buying back.
They're taking the money off the table that they put there.
Yeah.
They are thinking that the wealth effect has so inundated, imbued the system that the money has now created a self-perpetuating prophecy, a perpetual energy machine.
Higher prices.
Anyways, another stock that we own, Nuran Wireless, just came out with a press release that I am going to say, as a conflicted individual who has an option on their stock, so if it goes up, I make money, so not to be trusted. However, that being said, Nuran Wireless came out with a press release. Here's the press release. Nuran announces agreement for $15 million senior credit facility as financing for Cameroon and DRC projects. Now, let's put this in perspective. This company has agreements in place to build over 5,000 wireless sites in these countries in partnership with Orange, the $32 billion wireless behemoth, and Spacecom, the, I don't know how many billions they're worth, trades on Tel Aviv. But so now they've got the money to add their contribution to this essentially joint venture in a loan facility. So holy shit.
So pieces are being put together in a proper chronological fashion.
Yes.
So they're executing.
So the loan facility executing. The loan facility is conditional on, amongst other customary conditions in a financing of this nature, Nuran raising the remainder of the $30 million in funding for the project, or $15 million US. So Nuran has $15 million of the money tied up, and they need to raise another $15 million. So US, let's see.
But the harder 15 is the first 15.
Well, Nuran has already contributed $5.1 million in equity over and above the product expenditures, which includes the first phase of 122 sites. So basically, Nuran is 2/3 of the way there, and it's debt financing, which is going to be serviced by the revenue from their subscribers, because these things start up and they're revenue generating right away, every site. So this, to me, despite the fact that I have an option at $1.70, we share an option at $1.70, us and the crew who makes this all happen. This is transformational, no ifs, ands, or buts, from a corporate milestone projective. I'm not predicting the share price to go higher, because that would be a no-no.
How does the stock do today?
So here's the chart.
Wow, that's a nice green candle there.
So $1.53, wow. So up 23 cents since yesterday on this news. That's up 17% on the day. Now, as this news filters into the mindsets of the people who own this or who are following this story, I think it's going to become very much of interest. I think there's going to be a lot of buying interest because this deal is going to, when people do the math, they're going to realize that this is a low cost of capital financing for all of the projects that generates a lot of revenue for the company, of which the profit margin just gets better and better over time. So I'm going to leave it there, but just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that Nuran is about to blow the doors off, baby. We have Nuran Wireless, NUR, and the other one that we have to talk about today is VXTR, our other sponsor. We have a million options in this company at $1.15. We are finally in the money after almost a full year of helping. Oh no, we're not in the money. It's $1.09. Look at that. It was in the money. It was up to $1.24 yesterday.
See how it works?
Yeah. 1 minute you're in the money. We're in the money. But I'm not concerned. This is consistent with Voxtur's performance in between earnings announcements. And as has been telegraphed by management consistently over the last year, it is Q1 2022 earnings, which will be announced in June of 2022. May. It'll be announced by May 31st. That is the inflection point quarter that they're going to announce, which is going to see earnings quite considerably expectations exceeded. And so, this thing is just slowly bumping and grinding higher over time. They just raised $15 million. I think there might be more money in the future. I know that Doma, their US competitor, is down to $4.35 from a high of $7 and change, I believe. I think they even got up to $9. Actually, let's pull up a chart of Doma. So now Doma is the much better capitalized, much more, what am I going to say here? Well, it's got Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary of the United States, on its board of directors. It has different investment bank CEOs on its board of directors. It's basically got the fastest, the biggest engine financially behind it, but its offering is nowhere near as powerful as Voxtur's. I think you're going to see a crossover in the price of Doma versus the price of Voxtur over time. I've got an article coming out.
Maybe they'll merge. You never know.
Well, this is what I've been suggesting: is that is that either Voxtur buys Doma, which is not out of the question considering how fast Voxtur's revenues are ramping, and Doma's has said it's going to be losing money for a long time, for at least till 2023. So you could see a merger of sorts. It could be one taking over the other. But anyways, Voxtur is just going to be on fire. Anyways, that's our show for this week.
Okay.
Next week, I'm going to be coming to you live every day. So I'll have one interview every day. It'll just be me a lot of the time. It'll be here some of the time. Sometimes it'll be 1 + 1. Other times it'll be 1 + none. Other times it'll be 2 + 2. And who knows, maybe we're all going to make some money in 2022 like crazy. Big date to watch this year is 02/22/2022. That's February 22nd, 2022. That date, in the numerical context, has all twos except for 10, which is the 0 in 2022. What's going to happen that day? I can't tell you, but it's going to be big.
All right.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Okay.
Don't forget to write us. We didn't get to all of your questions, but we will starting on Monday, because now I've got all week to talk to you, and we'll see you all later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.